inside of ladies and gentlemen. How are y'all doing? My name is Dave Jones. I'm your host with the most. And actually, I appreciate you just tapping in. Black Month Reflection Series is starting now. We do it every year. I started this back in like 2000, I want to say 18. And go back and listen to all the Black History Month Reflection Series. It's February 21st today, and I like to do it towards the end, which is why we call it Reflection. And you know, it's just a time for you to be a fly on the wall, listening to Black people talk about Black things, and that's just all it is. There's really nothing else. And we've been fortunate to have a lot of great guests on this show, and for the Black History Month Reflection Series, we've had some real hitters and just other people just community people. So I'm just trying to get different voices out there. But I'm really excited for today's episode because y'all are going to love this. Today's guest is currently serving as an executive leading a nonprofit foundation focused largely around aligning funding to give access to opportunities to those who are historically and perpetually marginalized. And then she also seeks to redress inequitable practices and policies that other youth and adults, while supporting inclusive ideation of solutions for broader systems change. In 2019, this person also was recognized by the South Sound Business Journal as one of the region's 40 under 40 and named one of the region's business leaders in 2023 as well, Business Leaders of the Year in 2023. She's a national influencer for the Cradle Career Education Solutions and serves various nonprofit boards, and she's just doing the most out here. She's supported by her husband. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the conversation. I won't say his name yet because I haven't even introduced the guest yet, but I am going to introduce the guest right now. It is the Dr. Tafona Ervin joining the show today. How you doing?
Oh, what's up? Thank you for that introduction. I love to hear the reflection of things that I've done so far.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on. This is the Black History Month Reflection Series, and so, but really, it's just talking at the end of the day. It's another podcast, but I do like to do it during Black History Month, just because a lot of organizations will just like post a graphic or like highlight an employee or something like that. And I'm like, it's way deeper than that. Like, let's talk about some stuff, you know? Yeah. And so that's what really guided me to do something like this is to go a little bit deeper in terms of how we celebrate Black History Month, and honestly all the time. All year round.
Thank you. So, thank you for doing that. In fact, giving voice and space and opportunity. You're right. There's so much that we can share that rarely do we get the platform and the opportunity to do it. So I hope folks are in for a treat because I got something to say.
Oh, I know you got anybody that knows Miss Dr. Ervin knows is going to say you got something to say. You would definitely have something to say. And I'm excited to get into this. Let's go ahead and just get into this conversation. First and foremost, how are you doing? Full transparency. I serve on the board for the organization that you are the CEO of, and that was a no-brainer for me to do that. It's in the realm of education, which is kind of my field. But anyway, how are you doing? Like, just in general, how's the year been? How's 2024 been?
Yeah, I'm doing very well today. I think this last weekend with an additional day off gave me much needed rest to just catch up and do things that not only fills my cup, but also allows for me to just be thoughtful. So I'm doing very, very well. The work is working. The kids are all the great things. I can't really complain. I'm blessed and thankful to have just another day of life because life is tough for so many, and so I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's what's up. Well, I let's get into the conversation because I like to think, like talking about Blackness, and how, as a leader, you're a leader in the community, and you have a strong voice, and you're doing a lot of advocacy work, and and it was interesting because I liked your response when I sent the questions over, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, and that's fascinating to me because I hadn't thought about it either a lot until someone asked me that not too long. It was like a few years ago, and I was like, huh, Never thought about that. So, in terms of your blackness, because I asked you about your blackness and where do you think about that? I like to think of blackness as like this sliding scale that's based on like different experiences, and black people in America aren't, they're not all the same, and we all don't think about blackness, quote unquote, like that, although we live in our black skin,
Yep.
black and brown skin, I should say. And so where are you at in terms of your blackness, and how much do you feel like that it influences how you navigate your role as CEO for the nonprofit that you're with?
Yeah, no, I really was stumped a little bit when I did read that question, because I had not really evaluated like my own blackness. I wake up every day black. Like, that's just a fact. Which means I have to navigate the world as a black woman. And we all know the saying that black women are the most disrespected and the most overseen in all of America and really the country. And so I hold that quite a bit in everything that I do, but that I also find myself overcompensating a lot in how I show up differently in a way that is seen, is heard, is respected. And I know that respect is earned and not given, but as black people in America in particular, we've got to work even harder to be respected and valued for who we are. But when I think about blackness, so a couple stories come to mind. The first is I'm actually mixed, and growing up, I used to get teased a lot because my biological father is Cambodian. And there was this old, song and saying that we used to get teased. I won't repeat it because it's unnecessary, but it was one of those things where I didn't know my blackness then because I wasn't seen as like my other cousins or friends in the neighborhood. I was seen as this mixed girl who looked different, hair different. I recall girlfriends in high school, telling me that I got perms every year when I'm like, I don't even know what a perm is, right? And I had to prove myself around like the texture of my hair or the way in which I moved. And so I think I was introduced to this idea, what you described, the spectrum of blackness, but I didn't know then. And I'll fast forward. I recently had the privilege of visiting Ghana with the Black Future Co-op Fund, sent about 18 black women from across the state to really reconnect, to reinvest, and to really have like this cultural understanding of our origins and how we then show up as black women in this work. And the spectrum of women that joined was so diverse and amazing. And I learned so much in our 12, 14 days together. But one thing that came out of that was a woman who was born down south, and she can date back to her family's upbringings and even times connected to slavery and the way in which they lived on plantations. And she would talk about the culture for which her black family moved generation to generation. And when we were talking about that, there was something that I found myself just sitting in, which is the culture for which some black people have is not a culture for which I had growing up. Thus, going back to this, how do I define blackness, right? Like, generally speaking, people will say, oh, if you play dominoes, eat fried chicken, you're doing, whatever the stereotypes are of blacks in America. Like they're like, that's your culture. But there's also something really different. Like, you walk into your grandmother's house, you better be sure you're saying hello, you're stopping, you're doing something you need to do, you show respect, right? Family dinners that happen every Sunday like clockwork, and all the family comes together, and that was not an experience that I had. So when I thought about my own blackness, I thought about it in a state of like, it was a fragmented like piecemealing of blackness over time. And I have appreciation, however, for those who can like really name their cultural roots and their traditions and their values. And it makes me yearn for wanting to have that as I think about my own, still learning and growing in my own blackness.
That's interesting, because I think we have similar experiences in terms of, not similar is the wrong word, but because I'm mixed too. I'm a quarter Japanese, so my grandma was Japanese, and I grew up eating sushi, and I don't even eat sushi no more because I ate so much sushi and seaweed and just snacks. You know what I mean? That was the snacks I had. Like, it was, I go to grandma's house. The snacks was a seaweed square and some rice, some rice rolls, and some, and so that was kind of so my blackness is a sliding scale. That's why I say like it took me, and then I moved out to Gig Harbor, which is predominantly white, in elementary school. And so then when I'm coming out, all my cousins are at Lincoln and Stadium and all these other places, and I had a big family out here, and we're mixed all over the board. But like I wanted to be out in Tacoma. I wanted to be with my cousins. They were the coolest people ever, and I was out in Gig Harbor, and so I was seen. And then I'm playing on the teams I'm playing with. I'm coming out to Tacoma, and I'm the only black dude. Me and this dude Vince, we're the only black dudes on the team, and so I'm viewed differently. Like I was and what I'm into, or who I'm around, or how I talk, or all those things. And I'm like, well, I actually kind of, and it wasn't until my senior year I did an independent study on Black history, and I read more books in that year than I had my whole. And it was just me. I was just reading stuff that I wanted to read, and I read more books in that semester than I read in my whole high school career. and it was then I was like, okay, I need to read up on my history, or on my black history, because I'm not getting it from school. I'm not immersed in it. Like and I had a lot of questions. I was a hip hop head, so like that's all it was talking about. The hip hop I grew up on was like talking about our history, and it was a conscious era of rap. So anyway, I resonate with like what you were just saying resonates with me a lot, like in terms of just I wasn't immersed in it as a youth.
And I think what you just shared there about this, like this conscious search for defining blackness, especially in the Northwest, especially for all the things that you just described. You were either othered by your own community for circumstances outside of your control, or you were fighting to try to find. And when I say you, I'm also talking about myself. Like I was fighting to try to find like this connection, this relatability. Right. My mom would always joke growing up. She would say like, "Why aren't you out there running the streets with your cousins like that? Why are you acting different from them or whatever?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not that I'm acting different. I'm just, that I am who I am. I notice that." Perhaps what they're doing is not what I want to do, and that created this condition of being othered. And for a while, I actually internalized that. It wasn't until actually I went to college so I went to Lincoln High School, go Abes, and Lincoln is very diverse, like just a very diverse school. So everything that I was used to, at least my entire high school career, was that I always saw a person of color, certainly saw a lot of black folk. When I went to Washington State University, it was the first time that I was kind of put into a different space, predominantly white, but there were these communities of color that consciously got together, consciously had conversations, consciously were trying to make sure other people understood those groups for who they were and what they offered. And there was a diversity that that was made up of each one of these groups. And I found myself I'm such a learner. I think I'm a life learner. I'm always like eager to hear and understand perspectives and take that in to kind of like map it into my existing understanding so that I can become better. I'm always trying to be better. And I remember being in college like, wow, this is eye-opening. I'm learning so much about what it means to be black, what it means to have black family structures, what it means to be black with single family structures, what it means to have aspirations for this, what it means to be legacy, all of these things that really helped to shape me growing up, particularly into where I am and how my husband and I are trying to move as we are still trying to figure it out, if I'm being honest. But
I mean, it's all, we're all trying to figure it out still, I think, and where we fit. And that goes into the question about your role. You said something that I really was interested in, and you said overcompensate. You used the word overcompensate. Explain more about that. Like that's because I know from experience being in leadership positions and things like that. Like, can you explain a little bit more for listeners that might not understand what you meant by overcompensating?
Sure. As a black woman, I have had to enter every professional space with more research and evidence, facts to back my statements, with case reports or other testimonials to verify that what I'm bringing to the table is valid. And for a long time, I lived like that was the expectation of me as a black woman in any leadership position. So I found myself almost killing myself to strive for every answer to be at the ready if someone asked, every referral to be made if someone questioned what it was I was saying, and ensure that I did so with high regard, with, I have a senior in high school, and we are every weekend day, it feels like, trying to apply for scholarships. And he always says, you don't have to write a whole dissertation for these 200-word essays. And I'm like, and yes, you do.
Yes,
And
you
yes,
do.
you do. And here's why, and so, and a little bit of that is my own residual, effects of how I overcompensated most of my life. But there was this, there's just this time where for a long time I was the only Black woman. I was always the youngest Black woman. I was the only woman. I was the only Black. You name those different demographics. And so my voice, my contribution was not of value. It was heard maybe out of courtesy in some cases. And over time, I found myself trying to just be a true contributor of facts and of validity in a way that actually accelerated whatever it is I was doing. Part of why I went back for my doctorate degree after I told my master's chair that when I got my master's degree that I was never going back to education again. But I found myself needing to prove myself again, because absent that credential, I was just another talking head. I was just another, oh, you're coming from an experience, you don't have any evidence or research. And in the work that I do, at the very least, like, you need to have this evidence to prove what you're saying. Although we know those closest to the problems are the ones who can generate the solutions, and yet you don't take my solutions as value. So I had to go back and put myself in debt. Come on, Biden, I'm gonna need you to go ahead and cancel my loans too. But, I had to do that in order for me to get to where I am. And I will tell you, Dave, honestly, it's only recent years, maybe the last 2 years, that I have taken a step back from having to be that on top of it. And I feel some kind of way about it. It's like out of character because I've been cultivated for so long to do that. But there's also something very liberating about it as well, where I'm feeling good about when I walk in a room or when I share a perspective that people are really listening and trying to learn from what it is that I'm articulating. That makes me feel good.
Well, you're a trailblazer too, and just understanding like that what you just explained and what you just articulated. I think there's going to be, people. You've opened up the doors, I guess, so to speak, or kicked them down, I should say, because and it was a trip because I was at the stadium game last night, right? And here's what I'm just going to tell this story just to frame what I mean. They had a brother on the sideline as the coach, right? And back when I was coaching, though, I was the first Black head coach for the boys basketball team. But what I had to go through, I know he doesn't have to go through.
Right.
Because it's okay now. People are used to seeing someone in that position that looks like me or talks like me or listens to what I listen to or, yells how I yell, whatever. So, I mean, I think it's, and so now you look around the town, you got Black coaches all in the basketball sense, like a lot of places. But what you're doing is you're kicking down the door for to have it just be the norm.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, what you just explained, you have to overcompensate and stress out and come with more stuff. You got to be perfect, basically.
Yeah.
You got to be perfect.
Ooh, and it is
And
not
that's
easy. But
it's not easy at all.
So there's that. But also,
Yeah. So I mean, I think what you're doing though is impactful, and it's going to impact generations to come. And to have access to those leadership positions.
And that's the hope, right? I think that part of I still try to define like what is truly my purpose, and I'm starting to get more comfortable to say that I am indeed walking in my purpose. Like I feel like it needed to be, and I still kind of feel like it needs to be clear. It needs to be something people get, but also that's just not what I have been called to do. And I find myself energized and constantly looking to do more because I know that the way in which I saw the world in high school 20 some years ago now, that's crazy to say that, by the way, and how my kids see the world in terms of like their access and their opportunity, it's wildly different. And part of it is just what you described, because someone had to do this hard work of either being the first or continuing to like make the case or trying to ensure that what happened then doesn't continue to happen and perpetuate. I was reflecting a little bit with some friends about just, the blacks in America during this Black history, and I think that Obama, when elected and served his 2 terms, was the historic reckoning around race in America that we're only starting to see the consequences from. So everything that has happened over the course of the last 8 years, in my opinion, is because white Americans in particular are starting to see that it is in fact going to be a turn of events around how diversity is played out and shaped, which is why we have the book bans, is why we have these regressive laws, is why we are seeing all the things. It is the reaction. And as hard as it is right now, because it is very hard, I know, but as hard as it is right now, it is it got to get worse before it get better model, which is the better days are coming. That means our children won't have to experience, their children won't have to experience these type of conditions again. So you having to do your own Black history readings and learnings in one class over the course of your year won't be the process. It will be easily accessible. We won't have to search for learning. It will be there for us. And I think that is what I'm really excited about, and why I do the work that I do is, certainly I want better conditions for kids. I want every child who is growing up, particularly in circumstances of poverty or of marginalization, to have those access. But more so, I want them to feel liberated to say that I can actually be the change that I want to see in my community. And civic engagement is such a hard concept, I think, for today's generation. I'll say for my own kids, I think they see that we have a lot of freedoms, but they don't understand how we've arrived to the freedoms. They just expect like, this is freedom, so what's the problem? But recognizing that we have to continue to hold that. Otherwise, we have these pushbacks that we have right now in our state policies, federal policies, et cetera. And so I'm compelled to keep this work and my purpose and in my own work to keep going toward more liberated, more prosperous opportunities for all, because I'll be darned if, one of my kids feels like they can't because of the color of their skin, right? That's not going to be what happens, at least in the world that I'm working in.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, it's a trip to me about the Obama piece is I'm still curious to see how the generation that grew up, because like my kids were born, so one of them only knew him as the president up till 8 years old. And the other one didn't even know who the president was until he was the president, and so as youth, they saw, like, I remember, like, Tupac has a line, and even though it ain't heaven sent, we ain't ready to have a Black president. Like, that was what I was listening to as a high schooler, a senior in high school. Like, that was Tupac we all looked up to, like, he was like that guy. He was, he led Black people and the Black voice, honestly, for that generation. In my opinion, just from where I sit.
Sure.
And that's what he was saying. So our leader was telling us, we ain't ready to have a Black president. So that switched over to like only seeing a president that has the skin the same color as yours for the first 8 years of your life in your formative years. I wonder how that's going to play out for not only Black and brown kids, but for white kids that were born around that time. Yeah. And what were the conversations in those households? I'm curious. I don't know. Like, only white folks can tell me that. Yeah. But I know what the conversation was in our household. It was just like, yo, this is crazy. Like, I was sitting there as a grown man, like, I never imagined this would be my life. I never thought that this would be, the way things were in the country that I've been growing up in this whole time, from what I've seen. So anyway, I just think that that's fascinating that you bring that up.
Yeah.
Because I think about that a lot. Staying on top, like, I think you've kind of already touched on some of these things, but like, what are some of the most general challenges of being a not only a Black leader, but a Black female leader? Like, and you kind of already touched on some of those, overcompensating being one of them. And I'd say that's probably the biggest one, I imagine. But are there any others, just for the sake of?
Yeah, this is something that I'm constantly grappling with. I think for any leader, there is this like do maybe that's not the right word, but there is this expectation of you to not only be the leader for the work that you're doing or in the community that you're in, but also to people who are either looking up to you or coming up behind you, which then means that there's this expectation that you can model and behave or mentor in a way that helps to bring others. And then if you don't, right? And this is where I think the challenge is for me. And then if you don't, then you're seen as, oh, you are fill in the blank. You're too good to do that, or you don't have the time. Or I got a text not too long ago actually for someone who said, a couple of people in community feel like they can't reach you, that you only deal with like executives. And I'm like, when and how is that? Like I keep my feet to the ground always, and I'm always an open door. But if there's something that has happened, like please bring it to my attention. But that my time is also very stretched, right? Like I have 3 whole children at home. I'm running a whole organization. I got, aging parent. Like there's a lot of things that I have to manage. So to be all things to all people all the time, that's nearly impossible. I try, but it is impossible. And so I think that one of the challenges that I've been faced with, at least in recent years, is trying to like convey that I need like space and time to just be, like to just kind of take stock and be like who I am, show my own appreciation to my own self, while also like still leading in this way without like this criticism of maybe I'm not reaching back, right? I remember when I feel like this has been a theme over my life, but I remember when I went off to college and the friends who didn't go to college said that I became too good for them. Okay. Then I went on to get a job and work in corporate America was my first job. And I found myself always kind of being out with what I would call the good old boys. And then I was like forgetting about the other people who were in the organization. I was trying to get promoted. I wasn't thinking about bringing everyone out. I was trying to make my money, right? Yeah. My first kid, I needed money to survive. And then I get to this place of like, I'm leading an organization. Finally, I'm in a place where I'm like really making my own decisions. I'm really kind of like here. And then it's like, oh, but now you're too good to like be in community. And I just find myself saying like, that's not the case, actually. That is quite opposite. If I could do more, if I had more time in the day, I would do all of the things that you're saying that I'm not doing. But yet I am still human. I am still trying to figure it out. And I also still like me time. Like if anybody knows me, like I like to have fun. I like to enjoy myself, my family, like my friend, whatever I can do. And even that sometimes feels stretched and feels thin. And some sacrifices happen. But I think that that's been a little bit of a challenge for me, is just feeling guilty that people perceive me that way because they don't understand all of those contexts, but also realizing that it's not you, it's me. Like that old, it's not you, it's me. And I know that, and I'm starting not to feel bad anymore. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
Nah, you don't need to feel bad about that. That weight of, keeping it real, or, being in the mud or whatever. Like, I'm trying to get out the mud. I'm trying to be clean, man.
Right.
Like, I'm
Right.
trying to. You say get it out the mud. Okay, cool. Well, I'm not trying to go back to the mud. Like, I'm not
Right.
trying to like, and I want to, and you don't have to feel bad about that. But that is a real thing about Black leadership. Is Jay-Z has a line that says, "Domino, domino, only see a few blacks as the higher I go." And I read that resonated. That line resonated with me because I feel that way too. Like, and of course, obviously my wife is white, and we had a situation where I started to have to make different decisions on how I was spending my free time, because because of the leadership position I was in, I was constantly in predominantly white spaces
Sure.
because of just how we had to move or whatever. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of done with that,
Yeah.
and not because of the guilt of like not of leaving people behind, quote unquote. Like the Savvy Vets, shout out to the Savvy Vets. I don't even be kicking it with them. I'm on the chat, but I don't. Like last time Dave's coming around has been a long time, but I'm in the chat. Y'all know how to get to me. You can come to the house if you want to. I ain't doing nothing but just chilling and
Right.
being with myself.
Right.
But I feel like I think that's a Black leadership thing, of that weight that you carry of being, I don't want to say, it used to be being called a sellout. I've been called an Uncle Tom. I've been called all of those things, and I'm like, actually, I'm kind of doing the work for you and your kids, but at the end of the day, I'm
Right.
making more of the sacrifice than you. What are you
Right.
talking about?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah. That's,
so,
not to do my own plug, but I'm gonna take advantage. I'm in the process of writing my first book, and
hmm
it's this memoir meets storytelling, and it's factual accounts of my life over time, backed with like stories of what I grapple with, what I still have no answers to.
mm,
And the working title now, and I'm gonna copyright this, so nobody better steal it, but it's around the unseen sacrifices that we make, right? Like
mm,
particularly
mm,
as a mom, we hear a lot about like you live 24/7, always doing planning, strategizing for your families, etc., but nobody accounts that for real time towards anything. And I would say that that's true for the different lanes in which I function in. Is I give a lot, and there's a lot that people don't see. There are a lot of
mm,
sacrifices that I make each and every day, sometimes at my own expense. But I make those because they're in service to a greater good, for
mm,
which, as I mentioned earlier, I'm becoming more comfortable towards a calling and a purpose that I am doing. And
mm.
I'm 39 now. I feel like I'll be 40 this year. My running joke is I'm a grow up this year. Like I'm a hit a threshold of really growing up, being mature, being that adult that I know I'm supposed to be. And I find myself like actually realizing that, and I'm realizing that there are things that I need to just kind of like let go of, like what you said, let go of the guilt. I don't need to
Yeah.
hold that guilt. That is your own projection. That has nothing to do with me. And so how do I then allow for that then to be filled with something more joyous, something more exciting, something more, happy? And my happiness are simple things. Point in case, this Sunday, my family and I started to check things off of our, springtime to-do list. And we
hmm
had, one kid working to replant or repot plants. We had another who was working to, do cupcakes and stations to keep the little happy. We had another who was, helping. I was painting, another one. All of these things. But there was so much joy and
Yeah.
happiness in those
Yeah.
moments. Like I can't even describe. I cried
Yeah.
actually. I'm gonna almost cry
Yeah.
now.
I love
It
it.
was just so. It was like this is what life is supposed to be about.
Yep.
This is what I've been waiting for. I've been working so hard for this moment, and so that's kind of what I'm looking forward to as I continue to, mature.
Yeah. And shout out to the family, Brandon, Christian, Brandon Jr., Chanel. I
Yeah.
love the post the other day that you made about the kid asking, who was it? Was it Brandon Jr. asking like, what?
Christian,
It was
yeah,
Christian, the middle
middle
child. Yep. I'm a middle child. I'm a middle child. So I felt him. I was like, because I was the middle child that just went over here. I was like, older brother's doing his thing. Mom's worried about him. I got two little brothers and sisters. I'm gonna go over here and not
yeah,
make it stressful for mom because I single mom, four kids.
yeah,
Like that's how I grew up. And I was just like, I'm gonna go over here and just make sure that mom don't got to worry about me. Granted, she worried about me and I did do some stupid stuff and whatever, but
yeah.
that was how I kind of tried to operate. So I felt him on his question of why you got 100 pictures of
Right.
Chanel.
It's so funny because some people are like, "So how did you handle it?" I'm still handling it. Like I didn't have a real answer for him. Like Chanel, was born at a time I got active on social media, and she was a baby. Babies are cute. And then you keep it going, and she's the only girl. It's not you, baby. It's me. And so, if you didn't see, I had to get a flick with them yesterday. Post them, add it to the highlights. Christian,
Yeah,
you're welcome. I'm working on it. Like, but
that's comedy. I was laughing now, but yeah, shout out to the fam. You got a beautiful family. You guys are doing a great job raising those kids, and Brandon's the homie. And I remember when you and Ann and you guys were in ALF together, ALF. I was like, I always like B. I was like, I don't know why haven't hung out with him more. Like it's just, I don't be hanging out like that really. To be honest with you, I'm a creative. I go and create or go and try to get inspired, and then I create. But that takes time. It takes
yeah,
space. Like
yeah,
I can't just
yeah.
do it in a small box. So I don't hang out as much as I should, but I do enjoy hanging out with B. It's always fun.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know he feels the same. One of the things that we are having conversations about So we had to get it out the mud. We had to like figure out life, how to raise a family, how to get to where we are today, really in most part on our own. And but because of that, it has guarded us to how we engage and actually interact with other couples, other families, in a way that is, mutually beneficial. So I hear you about like you not hanging out, and there is something where we are becoming a little bit more intentional and purposeful in the coming years around like who we actually engage with. Like I love everyone. If you know me, I have a heart for every single person. But if you're not contributing to like how we move as a family structure, how we advance ourselves, how we challenge ourselves to be better, then you're not helping us, right? You're taxing. And I don't see it as a negative way. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
And
what are we
so
talking about?
what are we talking about? And so I think Brandon probably got to that point a little bit faster than I did, but he's also older. I need to note that he's older. And then also, and I'm probably on the like, I just want to hang out and everybody's fine. But I'm starting to see the value in that. And so we're trying to do that a little bit more. So you'll probably see, more invitations too, like backyard barbecue, let's do it, bring all the kids together. Because I think both our boys are about the same age. And so it all makes sense.
Yeah, and it'll happen. It already does happen, but like and we're all busy too. Like that whole part about like it was so real when you were saying like people saying, "Oh, you're too busy for me anymore," or we don't see. I get that too all the time. Like just like, "Oh, Dave's over here. He's," and I'm like, man, I'm just trying to. I ain't different. Just my priorities and how I spend my time is different. That's all. Like. You know how to get to me. If you want to go hoop, like I'll tell you exactly what gym I'm in, what day. Like you can come check me out there, and I'm just doing my thing. So, anyway, I just black leadership is hard. I guess I hope for people that are listening, especially white and other ethnicities that are not black and brown. Having black and brown skin in leadership positions is hard because you're just looked at differently, and there's just subconscious bias that you have to overcome, and that's just the reality of it. So I want to ask this next question. So, and I'm curious about this one because you've had probably tons of them, but can you share an achievement, a major achievement where you felt empowered as a black leader in that space? And let me just go ahead and frame this. When I went to Foss as an assistant principal, it was the first time, and this is no disrespect to any other positions I've had before that, but it was the first time in my professional life that I felt like at home, and like where I didn't stick out. There were other black people that were accomplished and great and all those things. What was that? Did you have a moment like that? Like whether it was an achievement or a space that you worked, or where you just felt empowered to be you and do you? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe there's
No, I can name it. I could name it. I mean, there are certainly a lot of micro achievements that I think led up to this, but it was circa 2020. It was the depths of the pandemic. It was at a time where I had just come back from maternity leave, just taken on this role of leading this organization. Another conversation we can have one day is that there was this white, I call it a white lash, like every white person that worked in the organization found themselves for whatever reason leaving the organization. They had their reasons, but it happened. As the first black leader of the organization, who was predominantly white at that time. And I just recall myself thinking like, okay, I've got to do something here. I've got to name, I've got to help to put some real context to this work that we're doing is not about the agendas of whites. It is about the liberation of people of color, those who have been perpetually marginalized in our systems. And so I remember saying to my team, we're going to host a conference. I don't care what's happening in the world. This conference is about the convening power of all walks of life who can come together in one space, who can hear powerful like testimony and or powerful like words of action and affirmation. And we're going to use that to propel the work that we'll do moving forward. And I'm sorry, it was 2019 that happened. In 2020, I hosted that conference in the middle of the pandemic. And everyone, board members, funders, staff members alike were like, you're crazy. How are you ever going to do this? Fast forward to today, we are in our 4th year. And where my greatest achievement is, I'm able to bring together hundreds of individuals from all over. I'm able to also have the Speaker of the House join the stage to talk about the direction of the Washington State Legislature, our senators, major funders like Gates Foundation, national partners with folks who are doing national work around cradle to career advancement. I was able to bring local talent, people who've been doing this work in this community forever, like our Palmer Scholars of the world and our CSFs of the world, like all of these individuals. Now, my work is education, but my work is about education justice. It's about ensuring every kid has everything that they need to thrive. And in order to do that, somebody has got to say when there's a wrongdoing happening, when there is a person who is making this challenge for families and students, or when there's a policy or when there's lack of access. And so my achievement is that I can get up on that stage. And this one, we had like 2,000 viewing at one time because we did it virtually. And then we had like a captive audience now recently, like 300-400 or so. We're trying to grow that, charting our future, May 13th and 14th. Come on out. But the achievement for me is that when I talk, people listen. And I was blown away at the way in which not are they listening, they're listening intensely. They are listening like with all of their selves. They are listening for like inspiration. They're listening for action. And I don't take that for granted because, to be told how they should think and what they should do, like, who are you to tell me that, right? Like everybody is their own person. But I find myself speaking my own truth to power. And I can sit on that stage in front of all of these individuals and people listen. And it wasn't until last year when we had this in-person conference and I did that I actually took a moment and I was just like, I was just so proud of the process, of the work, of all of the people who contribute, but also of myself to say like, girl, you yeah. And I don't know. And so this is kind of where I'm leading to. Like, I've got to do more. So a shout out to you again for doing this podcast, because it does inspire me to say, like, I've got to kind of do more of that. I've got to continue to tell a story, to like push the envelope, to break down barriers, to inspire people. Because I mean, everyone can eat, like everyone can win. We can all be out here succeeding. It is not a crabs in the barrel anymore. It is not a only some can get it. We make our own lanes. And I love the emergence of social media. I wish I was better with it to really like maximize and like really codify your own like values and all of the things to get the market that you're reaching. So I'm very proud of that. But yeah.
Yeah, charting your future is dope. I'm actually really looking. I have vlog footage that I took from the last one that I still haven't released yet from last year. So that'll probably be coming out here very soon. I'm sitting on so much footage of stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna definitely do something with that because my guys Trevor and Tashi, you had them there too, and the work that they're doing is phenomenal. And everyone that was there, the work everyone's doing phenomenal work. So let me ask you this. Do you believe, and this is we're going to kind of switch because thank you for that, by the way. Like that was, like when you start talking education stuff, like you're in your bag, you get in your bag, and I love it. Do you believe there's such a thing as like having too much pride in your Blackness? Or do you feel, and then also how do you feel about others who, because there are Black, like not everyone would be walking around like, oh, I'm Black and I'm proud. Like some people just don't really care. They just be like, nah, let me do my thing. Do you feel like how do you feel about others that don't really think about much and just go about life? Yeah. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a pretty loaded question for me because one part, One part of me feels like if you are black and you can walk around not thinking about your blackness, like what a privilege actually that is. Like what a privilege it is. And I don't know if we should
Damn.
be upset about it or if we should be aspiring for it, right?
That's
Because if you can be black and unbothered by all of the things that condition us to say, like, watch your back, make sure you're, standing correct, all the things, like that's a privilege. And so when I saw that, I was like, yeah, like I don't know if that's a bad thing, actually. I will give an example. My oldest son, I love him. He has his baseline is different from our baseline, right? Like he didn't come out the mud. My kid lives in a gated community. He is like he knows no adversity. I mean, he knows
He
adversity,
knows
but
some
his adversity
adversity.
is very
Yeah.
limited. But he was traveling for football, and he's 16, or he was 16 at that time, and he's about 5'11", growing out his hair, wears hoodies, all the things. And I'm like, okay, this is the first time you're traveling without us. You got your ID? No. Why? I don't need an ID. I'm a minor. You're black. Like that was the first thing I said. I don't care if you're minor, you're black. Like you're going to Arizona, you're traveling with people that are not your family who can protect you. You're going through TSA, like having your identification. He goes, well, what's the worst that could happen? There are, if they're going to, and he takes it so extreme sometimes, like, if they're going to attack me or whatever, they're going to do that regardless. I'm like, you're probably right. And there is something about having the credibility and the validation that you need to justify who you are as a young person, right? But he is that privileged, like black kid, I think sometimes that walks around and is just like, what are we talking about? Yeah, I'm black, but
Yeah, yeah.
what difference does it make? And so I don't fault him for that. But I do think that, where I started in this conversation, like I walk around every day as a black woman. That's never going to change. I'm fully aware of who I am. And so I show up as proud as I can be for all of the contributions. I don't lead with it in blackness. I lead with it in the contributions that I give, but I also attribute it to my blackness. Like if it were not probably for my blackness, would I be this type of person, right? Because I'm, no offense, but there's a lot of mediocre white people out in the world who got a lot of things that they don't deserve.
This is facts. This
So,
is big facts.
so I feel like, yeah, I do lead more proudly, more boldly, more courageously in my blackness, but they are backed by these attributes that I help to make that all come to life.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. That's a great way to answer that. And when you talked about people, black folks who don't have to walk around like that, and it's a privilege. It took me back to Nate Bowling. So Nate Bowling, who's overseas right now, and he actually has an article on that. He was just like, this weight, like when I'm over here, I don't feel it, like, and I was just like, I didn't, because I don't think outside of the context of living in the United States.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm curious about what that must feel. And I was like, I don't know what that feels like. And that'd be really cool to go somewhere else and just be Dave and just not really have to worry about that. Like,
Yeah.
that would be really cool.
When I was in Ghana, there was that feeling. There was that feeling of not feeling any other than you can tell we were tourists. Like there's that. But there wasn't this, there's a subconscious fear about being black in some cases, in some spaces, right? And there was not that. I didn't fear that because I was black, that something would have happened. If anything, I fear that I got into a wrong taxi going somewhere that I wouldn't know where I would go, and then power would go out because it did in that particular, community that I was in. And so I found myself like really kind of saying like, it is possible to be free and to feel like this comfort of just being. And what's interesting, as you were teeing up this conversation and you're talking about Black joy, I've been trying to step a lot more into that over the last couple of years, particularly around just taking like these moments of appreciation for how far we've come, for what we've accomplished, and to celebrate that and to feel good about that. So my husband and I sometimes we'll just sit out on the deck and we'll kick our feet up, we'll have a drink, and we'll say, damn.
Yeah, look at
It.
us.
Yeah, look at
Yeah,
us, right? Like, and every now and again, because we still got grind, we still got to grind and still got to work, but there is this need to be able to do that because if not for moments of joy, then what are we doing, right? What
right,
are we actually
right,
doing?
right. Um, that's dope. I have one more question, and then we have another segment that I haven't prepped you for. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. Do you feel like the next generation is primed to continue like the work that you've done? It sounds like from the boys and the daughter that you're raising, we gonna be just fine. You know, I know my boys are gonna be they're gonna be just fine. I'm not worried about them. But do you feel like the next generation is primed to continue this shift that we're talking about in terms of like perceptions about black professionals and especially in leadership roles?
The short answer is yes. And a conversation that my husband and I have all the time is about this sense of like urgency, this sense of like grinding that we don't necessarily see in our kids or in this generation. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just because that's all we knew, we expect that that's what it should be. But what I do feel confident in with this next generation is their new baseline, their new normal is far further along than where we were when we were growing up, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, like they just assume and because they assume, they operate and function in a way that is further along than where we were. So they're not like trying to look backwards or saying like, how do I make it or what do I do? They already have those tools, and technology and advancements and all of this social media is really propelling that quite
Yeah.
honestly. And I
Yeah.
think that that is a benefit to the generation, which summarizes in this is that I don't think while we still have to always pay homage to our history, we always have to be reminded of where we come from. I think that is so clear and evident that it isn't about naming the history as if it's brand new. It's about using the history to enforce what should be coming forward. And I think that we saw that a lot with the George Floyd racial reckoning, where a lot of white young generations were pushing back against their parents, saying like, "No, you're wrong. Like,
Right.
I don't care how you feel, you're wrong." And
Right.
while we are still in a space where there's a lot of loud racist individuals trying to hold on to this little bit of power that they have in the world, I think that that's going to fizzle away soon enough. I think in the
Yeah.
next, 5 to 7 years, perhaps one presidential term, I think we're going to see that that's going to change. And so the new challenges that we'll be faced against, which are things that we should be focused on, is climate. It's going to be focused on like more advanced technologies. It's going to be focused on not necessarily diversity and inclusion. I think that that's going to become normal place. And I think we're going to be having to figure out ways to be thoughtful about, I don't know, like AI is going to take over and it's going to be like I Am Legend or whatever, I Robot, who's going to, like happen to us. Okay, I'm being a little weird here, but I do think like, those are going to be the challenges that we're going to have to be faced up against.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think I think this next generation. I just had this conversation similar. And it was more about the All-Star game and how guys weren't trying hard or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, but Dame went in and got the 3-point MVP and the All-Star game MVP. Like, when's the last time that's happened? We focused on the wrong thing. Like,
Yeah.
the kids ain't the same, but we're not gonna be the same. I hate to tell you, but like, and here's the other part I said that really, I think people need to, like our generation, like millennials and Gen Xers, need to really think about when they getting on these kids. Who raised them? Who raised them? I said, don't get too hard on them because we the ones that raised these kids.
Yes, we did that.
So like, and that kind of shut down the conversation. Like, hey man, I feel you. I'm in the same boat, but at the same time, I realize that we're the people who raised this generation, and we need to respect that and respect that they're coming up in a different time. So
they're doing things differently, and we need to respect that their difference will probably lead to something great. And let's like
it sure will.
trust that process, and that's hard. Right? As a parent, that is
it's very
hard. You're like, no, I want you to do it because I can see it, I know, but then also, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've taken enough of your time. I appreciate you. I have one last thing. It'll be really fast. It's called Hot Take. So, Are you ready for hot take? Now, hot take is just a one answer thing. I'll say this or that, and you just choose one. And I might, you can explain just a little bit why you drew, but whatever. But like, are you ready for hot take?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's go. Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Okay, not a breakfast person. All right, The Wood or The Best Man? Have you
Best
seen
Man.
those movies?
Yes.
The Best Man? Not a Wood fan.
I mean, it's a good movie, but I'm more of a
But it ain't
family
the best.
drama Nia Long fan.
Yeah, I'm a Nia Long fan too.
Okay.
Since Love Jones, like it's been a long,
I know.
It's been a
We
long,
know.
it's
I
been a
think
long-
if you're not a black man who's not into Nia Long fan, I'm concerned for you. But yeah.
You should be suspect. You suspect.
Yeah.
Basically. Ann's a Tay Diggs person, so I was like, all right, cool. You can have all 5'3" of him. I'll, no shots. I'm just saying. All right, Beyonce or Janet Jackson?
Beyonce.
I knew that. I knew the answer to that one. Netflix and chill or Night on the Town?
Night on the Town.
$1 million or dinner with Beyonce?
Ooh. See the way my bank account is set up today. Look, I'm gonna offer this $1 million, but B, I love you, girl. I love you. That's so funny.
All right, well that's hot take. Thank
I
you for
love
playing
that.
hot take
Thank you
with
for
us.
that. That was fun.
Yeah, well, let people know how they can get in contact with you. Any other plugs you want for your book or whatever work you're doing, whatever. Just you got 10 to 30 seconds. Do your thing.
Yeah, look, chartingourfuture.co, that's CO. Registration's open. I would love for people to join. It's going to be such an incredible conference, and our receptions are always popping, like DJ, drinks, like photo booth. It's just going to be amazing. GraduateTacoma.org is the organization that I run, and we are on the cusp of doing something great for statewide impact for all of our young Black and brown students in particular. So if you would like to give, please donate. We're always taking donations. And just shout out to you and the kids. Like, thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you for even inviting me to this stage. I'm like, this is giving me a lot of excitement and energy about what I could possibly do in my future. So I'm appreciative of that. And of course, love to my family, because without them, I am nothing.
No, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to be on. I know you're busy. I know, I know you're busy. We're all busy, but this is an important conversation, and I think that people need to hear your story and hear your thoughts. And I think that, I just wanted to get it out there. So thank you for coming on.
All right.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up this first Black History Month Reflection Series episode. We have a couple more on the way this month, and maybe even the rest of this year. I don't know. I might just do some different stuff and just do it out. It don't gotta all be in February. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you got some from that, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow. You can check the comments for all those links to Tafona and the work she's doing. So with that, we'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.